Why brain health is going to be kind of our first topic today. And then we will talk about essential nutrients for brain health, the impact of our diet, especially our modern diet today. We'll talk about antioxidants and healthy fats and their role in our brain health. We will talk about the gut-brain axis and how the two are connected. And then we'll kind of tie everything together with how all of these will enhance our brain health. We'll also cover some common misconceptions and then end with some practical tips. So, with that being said, let's go and dive in. So, why brain health? Our brains, as I'm sure you know, control everything from our thoughts, our heartbeat, all of our internal organ systems. It influences our emotions, it perceives the world around us, and it does just about everything. So our brains are a powerhouse and they are amazing. And I just wanted to highlight this because in today's modern world, chronic health and mental health issues are on the rise. And it's important for us here to empower all of our heroes to feel like you have the support and the tools that you need to really support your overall well being, especially starting with the brain. In fact, clinically defined psychiatric disorders afflict just under half of Americans for at least one period of time during their lives. The lifetime prevalence of depression, anxiety, impulse control, and substance abuse disorders are actually twice as high for people who were born after 1945 than for those who were born earlier. So, with that being said, I really want to tie in what does nutrition have to do with our brain health among this rising chronic illness epidemic. So, let's dive in to how this all ties together. Nutrients, as we all know, I'm sure, are found in the foods that we eat, including foods we drink and consume. Maybe you are someone who takes vitamins or supplements to make sure that you are getting enough nutrients. And while vitamins are one aspect of these really important nutrients, we'll discover the importance of minerals as well as some other nutrients that are going to be vital for our brain health. So essential vitamins, starting with vitamin A. It's also known as retinol. Maybe you have heard of that as a very expensive face cream. Vitamin A is great for our skin and really is used in many, many functions within our bodies. It strengthens our immune system, it regulates genes, it helps form and protect new neurons in the brain, helps with our hormones, eye development, and maintains neuroplasticity. So this is a super important vitamin for our brains. Next is going to be vitamin D. And it does, again, similar to vitamin A, have many roles within our body, including neuroprotective effects. But today I actually want to highlight the role that it plays in creating what is called endorphins. And these are our happy chemical messengers that are created in our body. In fact, studies show that vitamin D deficiency is linked to increased opioid usage, as our bodies want to feel good all the time. So it's understandable. But if you are not getting vitamin D enough, then this could result in possibly addictive behaviors. And this is why, especially, you feel good when you're in the sunshine, because our body actually produces vitamin D through our skin cells when it comes in contact with the sun, which again will naturally release those endorphins. Next, vitamin E is an amazing antioxidant in the body. It's also been shown to slow down the progression of cognitive decline or impairment. Vitamin K2 is critical for the formation of the myelin sheath and the nerves within our brain. And for, again, my people who love science, the myelin sheath is a protective membrane that wraps around parts of certain nerve cells. And it also affects how fast signals travel through those nerve cells in the brain. So again, super important. Lastly, Vitamin B12 is really needed for your entire nervous system to function properly, but it does include major benefits to our neuron and our neurological health. Um, Deficiencies of B12 can actually manifest as certain psychiatric disorders, such as obsessive compulsive disorder, irrational anger, depression, manic depression, Alzheimer's, and even dementia. And just want to highlight, these are just a handful of vitamins. Of course, there are many more that are essential to just our overall health and well-being, but these are just a few that I really wanted to highlight for our brain health. Next is minerals. So we all have probably heard of iron as well as anemia, and I want to talk about why this is important for our brain specifically. So a lack of iron can lead to delayed brain growth. And anemia especially affects our brain in a negative way because it creates this chronic state of low oxygen levels in our body. So this is something called hypoxia, and when your body experiences this, it essentially is starved for oxygen. So we don't want that in our brain. So iron is going to be super helpful for providing oxygen to our brains. Next is zinc, which is actually involved in over 100 enzymatic processes within our body. But this specifically promotes antioxidant effects. It's helpful for neurogenesis as well as our immune system. And lastly is magnesium, which a lot of people actually call this the master mineral because it is used by really all of our cells. It's an amazing mineral, but specifically it is involved in the metabolism and maintenance of homeostasis in all of our tissues. And it preserves the integrity of the blood-brain barrier, and it harmonizes nerve signal transmission, which again helps preserve our brains. So super, super important. Next are our other essential nutrients. There again are so many that I could highlight, but these were just the few that I wanted to touch on today. So choline is critical for brain development, especially in utero. So especially for pregnant women, this is very important for development of the brain for the baby. And it accelerates the synthesis of something called acetylcholine, which is an important neurotransmitter, which is involved in memory storage as well as muscle control. Choline has also been shown to increase dopamine receptors, which again is that happy, feel-good chemical in our bodies. So next is something called ARA, which the long version of that is called arachidonic acid. But just for the sake of me not having to say that over and over again, we'll just call it ARA. And this is a very important omega-6 fatty acid that is actually comprised of 11, or sorry, our brain is actually comprised of 11% of ARA. So this is much higher than any other level of any of other organs. And so this is critical for also what is called our second brain, which is our gut, and we will dive into that in a little bit as well, because it's also needed for tight cell-to-cell junctures, which is something that prevents leaky gut. So ARA controls membrane fluidity and it influences the function of specific membrane proteins that are involved in cellular signaling. And this plays a fundamental role in the maintenance of our cell integrity and vascular permeability. And so these properties might explain why ARA plays a critical role in neuron function, as well as brain synaptic plasticity and long-term potentiation, which is synaptic transmission in the hippocampus in our brain. Lastly is cholesterol. And similar to ARA, it is mostly abundant in the brain. It's actually about 20% of our brain, and it is higher in the brain than it is anywhere else in our body, which is amazing. And similarly to ARA, it is also used by the cell walls in our gut in order to help our gut function properly. There is a reason why the first food for mammals is breast milk, which is actually mainly cholesterol. So it's really, really amazing for growing and developing bodies and brains. There's also a study that shows that a higher overall body concentration of cholesterol was associated with a lower risk of depression. So this is not something to be afraid of, contrary to kind of the popular narrative around cholesterol today. So with that being said, I would love to ask you guys to put in the chat if you want to take a guess. With that being said, which percentage of fat makes up our brains? Is it A, 35%, B, 93%, or C, 60%? Go ahead and give you guys a few seconds to think about it. And again, if you want to put it in the chat. Ready, give a few more minutes. I'm seeing some answers here. Loving that. So the answer is actually C. Our brains are made up of 60% of fat, which is amazing. So, as you all know, hopefully by now, that there are certain nutrients that maintain our healthy brain. So we'll talk about the impact of our diet and our modern food today. And I particularly love this quote from Anne Wigmore, which says, "The food you eat can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison." And I don't say that to incite fear in any way whatsoever, but truly just want to reflect on the power that food has to act as medicine and to act as healing agents within our bodies. And so, in today's modern world, it's really hard to know which quote unquote diet is best. Or, we tend to put labels on food. Like this food is healthy or this food is unhealthy. And so there are many narratives around food and nutrition out there, which really can make this such an extremely confusing topic. And that's why we wanted to shine this light on this topic today and highlight some foods that might be better for our brain health overall compared to others. So, when we walk through the aisles of our grocery store, unless you're in the produce section, you are most likely to see ultra processed foods. So, these are our canned foods, boxed foods, pre-made frozen foods. And these are going to be typically higher in sugar, in calories, refined carbohydrates. They're going to be lower in these healthy fats, and also filled with things like artificial flavors, dyes, preservatives, and even pesticides that can all wreak havoc on our nervous system and our brain as well. So while it might seem impossible to fully avoid foods with these unnatural ingredients, and I certainly don't want to, again, incite any fear because truly it is almost impossible to avoid foods that maybe aren't going to be filled with, one ingredient or another that might not be the best for us. There are things that we can do to help set our bodies up for success and protect our brains. So this is where antioxidants and healthy fats come in. And so we've already covered how our brains are mostly comprised of fat, and we need to be aware of which fats are more beneficial than others. So, along with including antioxidants in your diet, you are sure to set yourself up for success when you eat the right ones, and this will create an extremely healthy and happy brain. So, let's start with some more unhelpful fats. Um, Really, anything that is ultra processed is going to be higher in what is called omega-6 fatty acids. And I don't want to say that these are bad because inherently they're not. It's just the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s within a specific food can make it more inflammatory if there are higher omega-6s. So things like ultra processed oils, trans fats can be cause inflammation, And these can even include things like canola oil, sunflower oil, soybean, or cottonseed oil. Um, and while these do have omega-3s in them as well. Just something to make sure of if you do consume these kinds of oils is to make sure that you are getting a high quality oil. So this looks like organic, if possible, or cold or expeller pressed oils. Typically, when these oils go through processing, they can be mixed with GMOs, pesticides, and certain chemicals like hexane, which is um, actually a known neurotoxin, and these can actually be present in these oils if we are not careful to source them properly. So personally, the helpful, healthy fats that I would recommend are things like ARA, like we had mentioned earlier, omega-3s, and these can be found in wild caught fatty fish, butter, milk, cheese, and again, just highlighting the cold pressed or extra virgin oils. I personally love olive and avocado oil, and then even flax oil is a great alternative as well. So next, of course, are antioxidants. And if you are like me, you probably associate berries and fruits with antioxidants, which is absolutely true. Berries especially are extremely high in antioxidants. And as I'm saying the word antioxidant so many times, maybe you're wondering, well, what do these actually do in our bodies? So they protect our bodies and our cells from something called oxidation. So antioxidation. And when you imagine cutting open an avocado or an apple or peeling a banana, if you let those sit for a couple of hours, what happens to them? They turn brown. And so this is an example of oxidation. And this does happen similarly in our bodies. While we don't turn brown or, don't change colors from oxidation, our cells do um, try to protect us from what is called free radicals. And so free radicals they naturally occur in our bodies. Maybe you've heard of them. They are helpful for certain processes or they're a byproduct of certain processes within our body. So they are normal and again, not something to be afraid of. But when free radicals kind of get out of hand and our normal cells that help kind of keep everything regulated within our body, they're not able to process and kind of clean out the free radicals, that's when that can become problematic. And so these antioxidants are really that kind of that first field of defense for our cells to protect from those free radicals from getting out of hand. So mainly, you can see in this list here, we have CoQ10, which is also known as ubiquinone, beta carotene, zinc, selenium, vitamins A, E, and C, glutathione, certain bioflavonoids, as well as herbs. And these are all amazing, and we will just dive into some foods that you can find these in. So, not to be overwhelmed, again, take what feels right for you, maybe add some that feels right for you. If there's something that you see and you're like, absolutely not, that is totally fine. Always do what feels aligned with what works best for you. But just to highlight some foods where we can find these antioxidants. Um, for CoQ10, we have things like beef heart, beef liver, if you can stomach organ meat, or things like sardines and seafood. Maybe if you are more plant-based, eating things like spinach and peanuts, will have rich sources of CoQ10 as well. For beta carotene, all of our orange and yellow fruits and vegetables, as well as dark green vegetables. For zinc, you have your oysters, herring, lamb, even whole grains. For selenium, you'll find that in butter, meats, again, seafoods, and whole grains as well. Vitamin A, you can find in cod liver oil, butter, liver, oily fish, and vitamin E, again, that antioxidant, you can find in cold pressed and unrefined oils. Vitamin C, of course, like we talked about, is found in berries, our citrus fruits. It's even found in greens such as broccoli and kale, even fruits like kiwi, or guava, and even parsley is rich in vitamin C. Next, glutathione is found in fresh fruits and vegetables, as well as fresh meat, and even found in raw milk or raw dairy, if that's something that you have access to. Bioflavonoids are found in most fruits and vegetables, including buckwheat, and polyphenols are especially rich in green tea and again, berries. And then herbal sources like milk thistle, ginkgo biloba, and turmeric are going to be great for fighting inflammation, um, and promoting those antioxidants in our bodies. So now we can talk about the gut-brain axis. Like I said, we were going to touch on this. And maybe you have heard the phrase at some point in your life, trust your gut. Well, there may be a reason for that saying, and that is because the gut is considered to be our second brain. Our intestines actually have the same chemical and cellular structure as our brains. And in fact, 90% of our neurotransmitters are made in the gut. This is also due in part to our incredible microbiome, which helps break down our foods and absorbs nutrients, and again, helps produce those neurotransmitters. And so this is why conditions like leaky gut, which I had talked about a little bit before, can have a detrimental effect on our physical and mental health. Maybe you've heard of leaky gut, maybe you haven't, but not to get too deep into it, but really what it is a condition where your gut lining becomes weakened, usually because of um, inflammation or maybe foods that don't necessarily agree with you, especially gluten can be particularly triggering. And this causes our cell walls. So if you imagine our cells like this, like really tight in our gut, what happens is it causes them to kind of separate. And so normally when we digest our food, it's supposed to go through our gut when our gut is sealed. But if we have gaps, larger food particles can actually leak into our bloodstream and into our body, which can cause autoimmune issues, allergic reactions, and really just inflammation in our body because your body sees that as an invader, a foreign object in your body that's not supposed to be there. So, next question that I have for you guys, if you want to throw it into the chat. What do you think? Which neurotransmitter or transmitters are made in our gut? And I'm seeing a couple answers. So this was actually a trick question, and all of these are made in the gut. So GABA is great for relaxation, serotonin and dopamine are also those happy chemical messengers. So um, those are all made in our gut. Alrighty, so we have covered a lot so far when it comes to the many different types of nutrients and how they affect our brains. So I just want to summarize everything and really just kind of tie things together here. So how do we enhance our brain health with everything that we just talked about? What it really means is focusing on eating foods that love you back. And what that means is eating foods that make you feel good and maybe don't make you feel like you're inflamed or have a foggy mind or, feeling a certain type of way that's not great. So being able to identify those foods that make you feel your best, also prioritizing your gut health, because as we know now how important our gut is, in connection to our brain and to our mood and just our overall health. Um, and a bonus tip as well is going to be reducing your stress because that is just going to really tie everything together and kind of put the cherry on top as you take care of these specific things. So I again would like to highlight the many confusing messages that are out there in the world about food and our health. And so I hope so far you have been able to see maybe some common misconceptions about nutrition today that might not fully be true. And hopefully you are able to kind of see now that there are benefits of healthy fats, including cholesterol, and maybe it will take away not fearing full fat foods. And also taking away the key that your gut health is so beyond important to supporting your overall health in your brain. And remembering that our bodies aren't just separate systems that are not connected to one another, but really that everything is connected. So, what are some practical tips? What can we do with all of this information? So, an easy way to start is prioritizing if you do eat gluten or certain grains, soaking them or sprouting them or buying them pre-soaked or pre-sprouted at the store. This will make them a lot easier to digest. Even things like sourdough, the process of fermentation can reduce the overall gluten content. Of course, that's for people who don't have a diagnosed allergy or celiac disease, but maybe if you want to include those in your diet, but find a way to make it a little bit easier to be digested. That is a really great way to do that as well. Of course, supporting your gut health is going to be crucial in your microbiome. And so being able to reduce antibiotic use if you're safely able to do so, or if you are on an antibiotic and that's something that you do have to do, including things like probiotics to help diversify your microbiome, which in turn will help produce those neurotransmitters and those happy chemicals. Including fermented foods are really great, especially if you do have a harder time digesting like plant foods, making sure they're fermented or cooked can make them a lot easier on your gut. If you are struggling with something like leaky gut, eating raw fruits and vegetables can actually cause a little more inflammation because they are a little bit rougher, with all of that fiber. So cooking them kind of helps start the breakdown process, which makes it a little bit easier on your gut, or fermenting them as well. Of course, practicing mindful eating. This means, for me, releasing any preconceived thoughts or ideas that I had around food. This also means maybe removing labels around food, like a certain type of food is good or a certain type of food is bad, and really just truly learning how to understand which foods do love you back and feel your best. Of course, prioritizing high quality sleep is going to be amazing for just our overall repair and detoxification for our gut and our brains. A little extra tip there is trying to avoid eating any food about 2 to 3 hours before you go to sleep, just because the process of digestion can not be as good for you when you are trying to sleep, and it might disrupt some patterns of sleep there. So really my last point here is to focus on eating whole and real foods into your diet, and what I like to call crowding out processed or packaged foods. And really what this means is you don't have to completely eliminate those, because I know, like, who doesn't love, a thing of ice cream every once in a while, or some potato chips. And I'm not telling you to get rid of maybe your favorite foods that are maybe processed or packaged, but trying to kind of have the 80/20 rule that they like to call it is 80% real whole foods, and then 20% of those foods that maybe are a little more processed or packaged, because we don't want to create, again, certain food rules, and we want to be able to just eat our food in peace. So, with all of that being said, I want to thank you all for coming today, for coming with an open mind and being willing to hopefully learn something new and take away some fun information about food and how it relates to our brain health.